of rephrasing information in your own words, which is a vital skill for writing clearly and avoiding plagiarism. We will cover how to truly understand a topic, how to rewrite for clarity, and specific techniques to ensure your work is original. To get us started, why do you think it is important to deeply understand a topic before you try to write about it in your own words?
I guess because if you don't really get it, you might just end up changing a few words around like a thesaurus, but not actually making sense. I feel like if I don't understand the main point, I'd be scared of accidentally changing the meaning when I try to use my own sentences. Is that why?
Spot on. If you just swap words for synonyms without grasping the core idea, you risk confusing your readers or getting the facts wrong. To really own the information, it helps to read the text several times and practice explaining it out loud to yourself. Have you ever tried explaining a tricky concept to a friend to see if you actually understood it?
Yeah, I've done that before, like when I'm trying to help a friend catch up on a movie we're watching. But with school stuff, I usually find myself looking back at the book constantly while I talk. Is it okay to look at the original text while I'm trying to rephrase it? Or does that make it harder to come up with my own way of saying things?
It is actually better to look away from the text once you have read it. Imagine you are describing that movie plot to a friend. You use your own way of speaking because you are not reading from a script. If you keep the original book open in front of you, your brain will naturally want to copy its specific words and sentence structures. Ready to see how we can change those words without losing the meaning?
Yeah, that makes sense. If the book is right there, it's like a magnet for my eyes. But if I don't look at the text, how do I make sure I don't miss important details? I'm worried I'll forget the specific facts while I'm trying to think of my own words. What's the best way to change the words but still keep it accurate?
That is a great concern, and the trick is to jot down just the key facts as brief notes first. Once you have those notes, try to explain the ideas to a new audience, like a person who knows nothing about the topic, which forces you to use simpler and more original language. Do you think you would find it easier to explain a school topic to a younger sibling or a grandparent?
Probably a younger sibling. I feel like if I was talking to a kid, I'd have to use really basic words and maybe even make up a story or a simple example to make them get it. A grandparent might already know some of the big words, so I wouldn't have to try as hard to change them, if that makes sense. But I guess if I'm using kid language, I'm definitely not copying the textbook anymore. Would that be too simple for a school paper, though?
That is a clever way to think about it, because using kid language ensures the words are truly yours. You can always polish the tone later, but the important thing is that you have moved away from the original sentence structure, so you are not just swapping synonyms. Speaking of polish, even when you have completely rewritten every single word, why do you think you still need to mention where you got the information from?
Wait, do I still have to give them credit if all the words are mine? I thought that as long as I wasn't copying their sentences, it counted as my own writing. If I'm the one who came up with the way to explain it, why does it still belong to the book?
Even if the words are yours, the original idea or discovery still belongs to the author who first shared it. Citing your source shows you are being an honest researcher and gives your own work more credibility. Have you ever heard of writing styles like APA or MLA that help you give this credit?
I think I've heard my teacher mention MLA before, usually when we have to make those long lists of books at the end of a report. But honestly, I always thought that list was just to show which books I read. I didn't realize it had to do with every single idea I rephrased. Is it like, even if I describe a scientific discovery using my own goofy analogies, I still have to put the scientist's name next to it? How do I even do that without it looking messy in the middle of my paragraph?
Exactly. You just add a small note in parentheses with the author's name right after your explanation. Now that we have covered how to put things in your own words, let's move to our next section on rewriting for clarity. Before we do, can you tell me why replacing words with synonyms isn't enough to avoid plagiarism?
I think it's because, even if you change the words, the original author still built the whole house, you know? Like, if I just change the color of the paint on a car, I didn't actually build the car myself. Plus, if I only swap individual words, I'm usually still stuck using the same sentence structure as the book, which feels like I'm just wearing a mask over the original writing instead of actually explaining it in my own way. Is that what you mean by the sentence structure being a problem?
That is a perfect analogy. You are still using their blueprint even if the paint is different. We are now moving on to making your writing clear and easy to understand. A great first step is to summarize the core message in just 1 or 2 sentences. Why do you think it is helpful to start with a tiny summary before you dive into all the details?
Maybe because it helps me figure out what actually matters? If I can sum it up in just 1 sentence, I guess it forces me to pick out the most important part of the whole chapter. If I tried to do it without a summary, I'd probably get bogged down in all the little facts and end up with a huge, messy paragraph. Is it basically like a map for what I'm about to write?
Precisely. It acts just like a map to keep you from getting lost in the details. Once you have that main point down, it is much easier to see which facts are actually necessary and which ones might just clutter your explanation. Do you think writing a short summary first would make it easier to talk about the topic without needing to keep the book open?
I think it would help a lot. If I have that one-sentence summary in front of me, it would probably be like a safety net. I could look at my summary to remember the point, and then, since I am not looking at the book's long, fancy sentences, I'd be forced to use my own brain to fill in the rest. It's like I have the destination on my map, so I can find my own way to get there. Does that mean the summary should be the very first thing I write on my paper, or is it just a tool for me to use while I'm practicing?
Think of that summary as a tool for your brain first, though you can often use it as a great opening sentence for your paragraph. Once you have that foundation, the next step is to fix clunky sentences by breaking long, confusing thoughts from the original into smaller, clearer ones. Why do you think turning one long, complex sentence into two shorter ones helps make your writing more original and easier to read?
I guess when a sentence is really long and has a bunch of commas and big connecting words, it's easy to get lost in what it's even trying to say. If I break it apart, I'm kind of forced to reorganize how the ideas fit together. It makes it easier to read because there's less to process at once, right? But I also thought that long, complex sentences were supposed to make you sound smarter in school papers. Is it actually better to be short and direct?
It is a common myth that longer sentences sound smarter, but real clarity comes from being direct. If a reader has to reread a sentence 3 times to understand it, the message is lost. Does breaking down a long idea into smaller chunks feel like it would give you more control over the flow of your writing?
Yeah, it definitely feels like I'd be more in charge. If I'm the one deciding where the first thought ends and the second one starts, then I'm the one building the rhythm of the paragraph. It's like I'm taking a big, tangled ball of yarn and laying it out in straight lines so people can actually follow the path. But, if I make the sentences too short, won't my writing end up sounding kind of choppy, like a little kid's book? How do I know if I've gone too far with making it simple?
That is a fair concern, but you can avoid that choppy feeling by using transitional words like however or therefore to connect your ideas. The key is to make sure you have not accidentally removed the essential details while you were busy shortening the sentences. We just finished the section on rewriting for clarity, so quick question, why is it better to summarize the main point in 1 or 2 sentences before you start rephrasing the whole thing?
I think it's because it helps me focus on the actual heart of the message. If I don't have that main goal down first, I might get distracted by how the original author wrote it and just try to copy their style. Having that tiny summary acts like a guide, so I know exactly what I need to explain in my own way without getting tangled up in all the extra words from the book. Is that right?
That is exactly right. Now we are going to dive into our final section on specific techniques to avoid plagiarism. One of the best ways to do this is to change the organization of the information, such as starting with a different fact or idea than the original text did. How do you think reordering the sequence of facts helps make the work truly yours?
I guess it's because the way a writer orders their facts is like their own personal logic or their way of telling the story. If I just follow their exact same list of ideas in the exact same order, I'm still kind of following their footprints. By jumping to a different starting point, I have to figure out how to link the facts back together myself. It sounds like it forces me to think more about how the facts actually connect, instead of just trusting the book's plan. Does that mean I should look for the most interesting fact and start there instead of just starting at the beginning of the paragraph?
Starting with your most interesting fact is a fantastic idea because it lets your own voice and style take the lead. Writing in your unique tone naturally helps you stay away from the original source's rhythm and makes your work feel more personal. Besides changing the order of facts, when do you think it is actually better to use a direct quote instead of rephrasing?
Maybe when the person said it in a way that is so famous or unique that changing it would ruin it. Like if it is a really powerful line from a speech or something. Also, I guess if I'm worried that rephrasing a very specific definition might make it wrong, I should probably just use quotes to be safe. But if I use a quote, do I still have to do that parent parentheses thing with the author's name? Or does the quote mark already show it's not mine?
You are exactly right on both counts. You use quotes for those powerful, unique phrases, and yes, you still must use the parentheses to identify the author. The final step is to verify your work using digital tools like online plagiarism checkers to make sure your text does not accidentally mimic the source too closely. We have covered the whole process from understanding the concept to checking your final draft, so how would you explain the value of reordering facts to someone else?
I would tell them that reordering the facts is like being a chef with the same ingredients but making a totally different dish. If the book starts with the history of an invention and then explains how it works, I could start with how it affects people today and then go back to the history. It shows that I actually get how the pieces fit together because I can shuffle them around and still make it make sense. If I can't move the facts around, I probably don't understand the topic well enough yet. Does that sound like a good way to put it?
That is a brilliant way to describe it, because being able to rearrange the pieces proves you have mastered the puzzle yourself. You have successfully navigated through understanding the material, rewriting for clarity, and using original organization to avoid plagiarism. Before we wrap up, if you had to summarize the most important thing to remember when rephrasing an entire article, what would you say? Thanks for a fun and engaging session today. You did great. Have an amazing day ahead.